A lot
Mm-hmm.
of parents are really sensitive to sound. So crying or whining or certain types of things sounds really trigger them, but not all parents are really sensitive to that. Some parents are really sensitive to touch and other people's smells. But I think if you can identify what are the things that your child does that really put you on edge or make you really stressed, then you're more likely to be able to recognize when you're going to be in a space where you'll lose your mentalizing capacity. And one of the things that we know is that losing that capacity is a really strong predictor of not just becoming insensitive, but also becoming.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and this is, well, hello, anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share honest conversations, and uncover the science behind anxiety and well-being, all while creating a space where it's okay to not be okay. Let's continue this journey together. If you're just joining us now for this episode and you haven't listened to part one, please go back and enjoy that after you've listened here. I'm talking with the wonderful Dr. Jessica Borelli. She is a professor of psychology and a clinical psychologist, and she specialises in helping parents build strong, secure relationships with their children, but also helping parents to really savour the connections with their children and reflect on the wonderful ways in which you're connecting with your children each day, really strengthening those relationships. And in doing that, it can really help us feel so much more confident as parents and really connected with our kids. You have taken a germ of an idea about the way that you were able to reflect on your parenting versus a lot of your clients who would lie awake at night feeling about all the things that they'd maybe done wrong or suboptimal and feeling very anxious and perhaps guilty about that. And you've developed an intervention that has been shown in the science to be so effective. And one of the things that you have identified is that sometimes the way we can jump in as parents can backfire, and it can undermine the confidence of our children. And I did this last night. I was rereading my preparation for our conversation today, and I was like, oh, Jodi, our kids have to make a meal once a week each for the family. And our daughter was cooking last night, and she works for Guzman and Gomez, which is that, I don't know if you have Mexican, like it's a Mexican fast food here. It's really fresh and delicious. And anyway, she decided that she wanted to make this burrito bowl, and she's like, I'm going to do the chicken with like a Mexican seasoning. I'm going to do rice. I'm going to do corn. I'm going to do guac and sour cream. And she was sort of like replicating this meal that she sells at work. And I thought, this is fantastic. I'm not sure her brother's going to love it, but you know, that's okay. I was excited for her. And she was making the rice, and she's like, I've got this, Mum. I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. But then I could hear things going a little awry in the kitchen. And I just, my immediate reaction was step in and help. And she wasn't appreciative of that. And I understand that now. And then I realized as I was rereading my notes for today, I was like, oh, that was an opportunity lost there for me to let her sort it out. And it was only minor, but, you know, sometimes we can step in too much. We just need to let them work things out for themselves, don't we? So tell us more. I don't know if you can relate, but I think as a woman who lives with anxiety, I think part of my mindset is doing things properly and doing things right, in inverted commas, and just this realization, I've got to let them stuff up, make mistakes. So what if she stuffs up the rice? Who cares? Like, it's not a big deal. Can you talk to us about that? Because I wonder if other parents are sort of saying, yes, I step into, and we want to give our kids the best opportunity at being the most confident in themselves we can.
It's such a great example. And I love that you noticed that yourself about your parenting. Yeah, I mean, I have to say in this regard, I've learned the most from my husband, because my natural inclination is to step in and help. And I think that a lot of us are helpers, right? As parents, as psychologists and therapists, right? To kind of solve problems and be helpful. But actually in parenting, a lot of what's really helpful is stepping back. I'll give you one anecdote, which is which is really was a pivotal moment for me in parenting. One time when my daughter was, this is my oldest, she was, I think, like 1.5 or 2. She had climbed to the top of this set of stairs. I think it was 3 set of stairs, and they were carpeted, and she was about to jump off of them. So she was like a new walker at this point.
Yeah.
And I got up very swiftly to go help her, stop her, basically, from jumping. And my husband stopped me, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to stop her from jumping off." And he's like, "Why?" And I was like, "Because she's going to fall." I mean, it was a certainty that she was going to fall, right? Because she couldn't do this. And he's like, "So what?" And I'm like, and I had a hard time, and I was already researching anxiety at this point. And he's like, "She's not gonna, it's carpeted. She's not gonna get like seriously." I said, "She'll get hurt." And he's like, "How hurt?" And I'm like, I really couldn't answer the question. So I let her jump and fall, and she cried. And he's like, "She's not going to do it again." And he was totally right. And I started really, after that moment, stepping back in my parenting and trying to have this attitude of it is far more important to let our children learn their own limits
Yeah.
than it is to stop them from getting hurt.
Yeah.
And this has definitely been an experience where I've had to really, really curb my own like inner like
Yeah.
and to put that noise into words. It's been like a inner panic. I don't know, but because it does cause anxiety in me, the thought of my children getting hurt in particular, or making mistakes, I think is another thing that comes up for a lot of parents. But the alternative, I think, is that your child doesn't learn their own limits or doesn't gain confidence. And as a result, I now have children who climb trees. Like our children are known in the neighborhood as the kids who climb trees. And they're the best climbers because they've learned their own limits, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's better that your children make their mistakes now than later.
Oh, tree climbing immediately came to mind when you started talking about the steps and the enabling them to make mistakes, and that's why play, outdoor play and risk taking is so important for our kids' development, isn't it? And for them to learn those limits and to feel that little bit of anxiety, but to know I've got this, or no, that's too much today, but maybe next week it's different. And we had bush kinder with our here the local kinder had a bush kinder program, and the kids were allowed to climb a tree if they could get into it themselves. And I loved that. And sometimes I'd come home with a few scratches, and they could explore this beautiful natural environment and have that opportunity to, obviously parents would take kids to the park as well. But I think when you are an anxious parent, you can step in, and it's a beautiful anecdote that you've shared, and thank you. And you've got me thinking about Peter, my husband, because he would kind of say to me when one of the kids would fall and hurt themselves, because you can kind of anticipate the response, but you can almost trigger that response because they're like, oh, mum's worried, oh, I should be worried too, or perhaps I have hurt myself. Whereas he was kind of like, if they fall over, let's wait and see how they respond to this, rather than assuming that they're going to need, kisses and cuddles and, I don't know how many Band-Aids we went through when the kids were little, because that just solved every problem. But yeah, I appreciate that you shared that too, that it's natural, isn't it? And not necessarily helpful.
Right. And there is research that shows that fathers are better at this than mothers.
Okay.
They're better at encouraging children to explore their environments and challenge themselves. And their play, unsurprisingly, encourages more risk-taking than mothers' play. So I think that kind of dynamic of fathers leading this kind of challenging risk-taking play is it's not just my marriage and yours. It's most or more often than not. The other thing that you said that made me think about research is your reaction to their distress. And that goes back to kind of classic research on social referencing, which documents what you're talking about, which is that the parent's reaction to an ambiguous situation impacts the child's reaction. So if the parent reacts with distress and the child isn't sure, should I feel surprised by this? Should I feel scared by this? Should I feel delighted by this? Then it can shape the child's reaction, right? And so that's why people recommend don't react when your child gets hurt until you see kind of how your child reacts. But it's hard to do that. But the
Yes.
reaction that you have as a parent is strong and it's immediate, and it can be hard to control how you feel.
It can. It really can. It's that instinct. It's that nurturing nature, isn't it? So, yes. And that's where looking after our own anxieties and being a bit more present in the moment so we can respond after observing. We're not sort of reflexively reacting in the moment. And I say this with, this is all very academic and, we can learn. We can start to change the way that we parent by learning. And that's why people will listen to a podcast conversation like this one, because we all want to be the best parents we can. There is no perfect parent, but there are things that we can do that can improve our experience of parenting, the attachment that we have with our kids, the connection, and shape them for life and life's challenges. One of the things that I know you've talked about and written about is reflective functioning or mentalising. And this is something that I really want to ask you about, because we do, what you've just said is that our response in an ambiguous situation can very much influence the way our children react. But when we're stressed, or if we're highly stressed, it can really affect our ability to interpret what our child might need in that moment, can't it? So how do you support parents who feel pretty stressed, just day-to-day life feels hard, or there's financial instability, or there's a child with special needs, or just a lot of demands on both parents' time, or a single parent? How do you support parents who are experiencing a lot of stress and finding that it is affecting the way that they parent?
Yeah, undoubtedly, all of those dynamics can make mentalizing harder for a parent. And so I think that it can be really critical to do a parenting timeout, or something like that, where a parent actually, if they're aware that they're feeling stress. So, for example, maybe the first step is identifying what you're feeling in the moment, right? Which kind of goes back to this conversation about parenting presence, right? Being in tune with your own feelings and identifying how are you feeling in the moment, and saying, okay, so if you're feeling stressed, then taking a breather from your child. And even if it's just literally a minute or 30 seconds where you step into the closet, or, put headphones in for a second to play a song that that calms you down if you can't even step away from your child, or call a friend for 5 minutes, or something that you can do that you can identify that helps you kind of bring yourself down a few levels. That can really, really be helpful in centering you and bringing you back to your child. And then of course there are longer term things that you could do that can help you, but maybe not in the moment, but help you on a longer term basis, like exercising or walking or something else.
Yes. And what modeling that is for kids as well, if you can say, I just need a moment. And sometimes they follow you. I mean, there are some parents who are like, I get followed to the bathroom. I can't even go to the toilet on my own. But it's just, it's in those moments where you can. And sometimes it might mean setting them up in a way that they can not disturb you. But it's hard, isn't it? But I think those ideas are really accessible. And to be able to, like you say, just take a moment, take a few breaths, listen to something, go for a little walk, just step outside. I remember when my babies would cry when I was little, I had postnatal depression, Jessie, and when our son would be needing me and I was feeling overwhelmed and anxious and just getting to the point where I was becoming quite distressed, I remember calling Parent Line. We have a phone number we can call, and you can speak to a nurse to support you as a parent any time of the day. And he would be in his cot, and I remember she said to me, shut his bedroom door, walk outside, take a breath. He's safe. Yes, he's upset. Yes, he's crying, but he's not going to be hurt. Take just a few minutes. And we've got a big oak tree in our front garden, so I would just do that. And just not being able to hear it would enable me to just calm enough. I would go and just touch the oak tree, because it was like, I'm going to walk to the oak tree, put my hand on the oak tree, take a breath, turn around, come back in. And just that alone, just that minute or 90 seconds of reprieve was enough for me to settle. And so I think that, if we just need to find our own way. But I didn't ask you, the one thing I didn't ask you was, could you just explain reflective functioning or mentalising, because that's something that would be great to define.
Yeah, the two terms are often used synonymously to refer to an individual's ability to really consider behavior from the inside out, or kind of consider the underlying motivation for behavior from the perspective of mental states. So things like thoughts, feelings, intentions. An example would be in the parenting context, if you're looking at your child's behavior and let's say they're like crying really loud or they just bit you or something like that, and you're trying really hard to understand what could possibly motivate their behavior. And response that's not a mentalizing response would be to think, oh, well, they bit me because they're really bossy or they're really entitled. That's not thinking about your child from the perspective of mental states, because it's giving an attribution that's very personality focused or something else. But you could think about it from a mentalizing perspective and think, well, maybe they're really angry or they're really frustrated that I'm not able to respond to their needs, or they were missing me, or they can't get through to me, and that's really making them desperate or something like that. That's really trying to get into their head and think what might be motivating them. And the really important thing about mentalizing is that it's linked to greater sensitivity in parenting. Because when you think about what's happening with your child, you're more likely to respond to them with compassion.
Oh, I can understand that link so strongly, and it takes me to the saying, all behaviour is a message. And I don't know if you've heard it put like that before, but a psychologist that I interviewed a few years ago on the podcast shared that, and it's just that what is beneath this, what I'm seeing on the surface, the behaviour, there's what's underneath it. And when I'm a speaker, Jessie, and I go into schools and workplaces and talk about anxiety and the nervous system and well-being, and I have a slide which is an iceberg, which is clearly the behaviours on the top, what's underneath, thoughts, feelings, sensations that are private, that we and so it's this idea of we try to think about what could be underneath this. And the fact that you said that's very much linked to more compassion and more sensitivity, makes perfect sense. So, Jessie, is there any question that I haven't asked you, or something that you'd like to share that we haven't covered?
I think one thing that's important is for parents to kind of identify what their sensitivities are in parenting. You made me think about it when you brought up your son crying, because I think different parents are really sensitive to different things. A lot of parents are really sensitive to sound. So crying or whining or certain types of things, sounds really trigger them. But not all parents are really sensitive to that. Some parents are really sensitive to touch. So when their toddler's hitting them or grabbing at them or something like that, that's really, or getting in their space, that's a really big trigger for them. And I think and other people's smells, but I think if you can identify what are the things that your child does that really put you on edge or make you really stressed, then you're more likely to be able to recognize when you're going to be in a space where you'll lose your mentalizing capacity. And one of the things that we know is that losing that capacity is a really strong predictor of not just becoming insensitive, but also becoming abusive towards your child and doing something that you would really regret later. So there's a really strong motivation to not want to get into that space and to want to intervene like in yourself sooner, right? And do the kinds of things that you're talking about doing, leaving the house or taking a time out, but also developing an awareness of what are the types of things that are going to put you in that situation is part of being a more aware parent.
Oh, thank you very much for sharing that as a last idea for us to reflect on as parents. And I think sometimes I feel as though we just need a little bit of parenting reflection time, just to sort of step away and just listen to a conversation like this, but then maybe take 15 minutes to sit and think, right, what can I do differently to support myself so I'm less likely to feel triggered? How can I take my little time out when I need it? And how can you take so much of the wisdom and ideas that you've shared? Because it's great to listen and nod along to the ideas, and I'm doing the same, but I'm going to actually go back and listen when this is published and take some notes and think about what do I want to do differently, because even just one small change can have quite the ripple effect, can't it?
Yeah, totally. But it also can allow you to make some strategies too. So if you don't feel shame around these things, you can do things to actually reduce your sensitivity. I've had clients, for example, wear earplugs around their children, which might sound, I don't know how it might sound, but it might sound bad. But actually, if you're just sensitive to some of the sounds your children make, then it reduces your sensory sensitivity and allows you to be more present with your children, right? Or you might have rules that your child can't touch you in certain ways. And also, that might just help you be more present. So being aware of what you can handle and what you can't can actually allow you to be more present as a parent.
Yes. Oh, thank you for sharing that and then it helps reduce any guilt around feeling that way and feeling like, well, everyone else seems to not be bothered by this, or because it can be so much comparison as well. And so you've really normalized so much and shared, gosh, so many brilliant insights. And I know you've got a book. When I overlooked mentioning that at the beginning, and I'm sorry about that, because I want to, if you could please let our listeners know where they can find more of your work. I found, so it's Dr. Jessica Borelli, Borelli. I found you on with your beautiful Psychology Today article, Bringing Presence Back to Parenting. But where can people connect with your work? And can you tell us a bit about your book, please?
Yeah, I have a couple of books actually. They're all available on Amazon and Audible. I have a book on Audible too, but probably the best way to find me is on my website. It's www.drjessicaborelli.com.
Perfect. Okay, and all the information will be there as well. Yes. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Honestly, Jessie, thank you so very much for your time. It's just been an absolute delight talking with you, and I just feel so seen and heard, but also better equipped. And I'm excited to start putting some new things into practice at home myself. So thank you very much. Thank you for sharing this time with me on Well, Hello Anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.